Hey, how's it going, guys? This is a video to show out Tyger River Disc Golf Course for prep of the Hub City Halloween Open 2022 B Pool. So this is MA1, MA2, and I believe MA40 layout. So we're playing Tyger River as our third course from the blue tees. Mostly yellow baskets with 3 reds mixed in. So I'm playing this with a buddy that's a little bit more local than I am. But anyway, so cool. Hole 1, par 3, 280 feet. I'm throwing a forehand here. You can also go like a backhand turnover with a mid-range or putter. I'm going to try to go inside, kind of like that first one I threw was with a volt. Don't want to go too overstable on the inside line because it kind of needs to flip up and push a little straight. I think you can kind of see the basket. But I think there's already, excuse me, I think there's already plenty good coverage of this course from some tournament play from previous years' Hub City Halloween Opens by Ace Run Productions. So I'd recommend checking out those videos to see how those really good players play these courses. But just for my own sake, as well as getting a little more perspective on the course for anyone that's interested, I'm uploading some footage and making some commentary on a practice round I played yesterday out here with my buddy Alex. But anyway, yeah, that's hole 1. The backhand turnover forehand thinks they'll play, or either one should work. And we're going on to hole 2. It's 240 feet. Basket's back here on the left. There's a pure line, which is kind of a flip-up hyzer straight at it. I'm going to throw a zone and go. I'm just going to try to swing it in and hope I hope I don't hit a tree. If I hit a tree, it's fine. I'll get up and down or have a circle 2 look, but I'm mostly concerned with just hitting the primary gap and getting, deep on the hole and letting that zone kind of fade towards the basket. So that one worked out. Don't think I hit anything. And this is also just going to be unedited. I mean, I'm just plugging the footage straight in, and I'm going to make the commentary. So I've been trying to learn how to throw a grenade, so I think I saw someone do that on coverage, but trying to figure it out. Cool. So I think this first half of the course here at Tyger is pretty, it's a wooded part of the course, and then the back the back 9 is wide open with OB, and it ends up being very windy today. So I think the front 9 you're looking to just play some woods golf, pick up some birdies, don't get off the fairway. And then the back 9 is all about, to me, just keeping it in play. If I birdie a hole, I birdie a hole, but I'm way more concerned with just if I come off the back 9 with 0 OB strokes, I'm really happy, especially like today is just so windy when we get back there. But anyway, we'll get there. This is hole 3. It's a 338 feet or so. So you're trying to get around this corner, and the basket's up here on the right. The forehand needs to stand up a bit to push the distance. I'm playing it for safety because I don't want to throw the backhand and end up in the trees on the left. Because it's kind of like, if you're going to do the backhand turnover, I feel like you really need to use all of the ceiling that you're given. So to me, the forehand's kind of like the safer play I'm going for. But yeah, so here's an attempt at the backhand. I think this ends up being pretty good. This is a Fission Crave that's starting to turn a bit for me. So it needs to be a bit more understable than that. But that ends up pushes through those trees, and I don't know if it's quite circle 2, but the first forehand I threw was all right, and I think that's what I'm going to go for sure. Yeah, so here's where the forehand ended up, and I think this would be a pretty consistent play. If I throw it a little better, maybe I'm in range for a putt, but in general, this is more or less what I'm going to be going for come tournament time on this hole. All right, hole 4, we got a 400-foot par 3, but it plays downhill. You want to throw something that'll flip up and kind of push straight down this tunnel. I think you can probably see the basket maybe here. But anyway, so I think you can either flip up straight at it, or I end up throwing some that go down this right gap kind of a little bit by accident. And it's a lot of, no grass in there. So even though it's 400 feet, I think you really just need to get into this gap and glide a little bit, and then you should get ground play to help you slide to the basket. So I think this is a Fission Insanity. It's probably a little too understable. I'm going to either change to an Undertaker or a Crave, maybe an FD, and just put it like right here on hyzer to have it flip up. So I pull it a little bit, but that's still a par. I might skip ahead a little bit. I don't think either of us end up throwing any good ones. Alex, that's an MD3. I reckon that works fine. Get down there and it slides down once you get through here and you have a putt. But again, I think it's this hyzer flip up play. Yeah, it's just a bit high. End up throwing all these a bit high, so just got to make sure to get it under the ceiling. I think too low is kind of fine because you end up getting good ground play. So I'm going to skip ahead because we don't end up throwing any good shots to my recollection. So this is where my drive ended up that hit a tree, so just pitch it down there, get up and down for your par. All right, hole 5. Got a 204-foot par 3 down a tight tunnel. Yeah, we'll call it a tight tunnel. But yeah, for me, and looks like Alex too, we're just both going to throw a putter straight at it. So I got a beat up Envy. Just going to toss it down there on a little bit of hyzer. I think, if you're a forehand player, I don't need to say much about this hole. It's right in front of you. You just got to hit the gap. It's pretty good. It's a little high. I end up going deep with that, so need to throw that a little lower or a little softer to make sure I don't go too deep. I'm going to skip ahead again. There's me missing a putt. I need a comebacker though. Okay, now we got hole 6. This is par 4, 350 feet. It's going to kind of go right up here through this gap and then tail off to the left again at the end. So I think if you go watch like MPO from Hub City Halloween Open coverage the last couple years, some of those guys, are throwing a backhand turnover, speaking for righties, that kind of gets near the green. For me though, I'm just going to try to play a forehand around the corner and just have a consistent play to the middle and then try to get up and down for birdie. I did throw a turnover backhand, and I didn't quite like it because I feel like I need to get more right after going through the gap. If you end up on the left side back here, you can be pretty cut off on your angle into the green. So in terms of playing it as a par 4, I'm definitely looking for something that finishes right after it gets around this corner. Because even if I'm in the woods on the right, at least I have a direct line or angle to the green. Whereas if you end up on the left side, this is the backhand I'm talking about. It ends up pushing straight on the left side, and I'm a bit cut off. And I like the way the forehand finishes better. So ideally get around this corner and kind of finish up here in the open. But yeah, this is that first forehand, caught trees and just sat down right here. A bit obstructed, but there's enough of a gap in a straight line to the pin. And it's a little too stable. This is where the meteor ended up, so this is the backhand I was talking about. Just a little too much on this left side, and it's just hard to get something that'll get over enough to the green. I think that ended up working out as a putt, though. But yeah, man. So I believe this is one of the holes we are playing the red basket on. If I look at the tee sheet, it says red, and this is certainly a red painted basket. So looks like last year for MA1, this hole averaged a 3.5. So if you a 3's, picking up half a stroke on the field. So I think just chop it off, in small bits, keep it simple, and try to pick up the bird. Here we got hole 7, a 270-foot par 3. Plays shorter than that because it's downhill. I don't know if it is quite 270 feet, but relatively simple with the exception of making sure you get it the right height. I think height is key on this hole because, too high, you're hitting this tree. Too low, you're going in the ground. So really just got to kind of squeak it about band high, I would imagine, and just let it get down there. Forehand, backhand, whatever you want. I'm undecided at this point in time if I'll throw a backhand or forehand in the tournament. The first backhand I threw was pretty good. Here's Alex going for like a skip kind of backhand hyzer through that wide gap. I like that play. This is just a forehand meteor, just flick it on some hyzer straight at it. I like that. I'm just not, forehand's not always my go-to, so I'm a bit undecided. I kind of like the forehand because I feel like I'm less worried about getting the height right. So there's where that first backhand ended up, and I'm gonna skip ahead to the next hole. All right, hole 8. We got a 360 foot par 3, but it's uphill. Probably plays 400-ish. Alex here is going to go for kind of a turnover backhand down the left. It's pretty good. I don't know if he hits any trees, but gets up there pretty clean. I'm pretty much trying to go the same thing, maybe a little understable on some hyzer right here and have it turn and just push straight up through this gap. Then we got a little bit of headwind. Yeah. Yeah, it just came out high. It could have also been just throwing it nose up and then a little bit of a wind lift. We're also going to try out some forehands because I think you go forehand and you try to push it through this gap here and have it fade back to the basket at the end. Just get over on it a little bit. I'm going to end up doing the same thing here in a minute. Crave. That one ends up, I mean, that's fine. That's just up the middle. It's certainly not a birdie, but it's also, it's fine. It's up the middle. Past the basket is a steep downslope to a road, which is OB. So while you could play it like a par 4, I think you do want to get as much distance as you can off the tee just to make the upshot easier, given that you want to get as close to the basket as possible. To make your putt less stressful, given that if you have a putt towards the road, it's pretty scary given that it's just a very steep drop off behind the basket. You can kind of see here, basket's up here on the left side of the screen, and it is just perched right on the top of a hill. So I think, you definitely want to progress as much as you can on the drive while keeping it in the middle, just to make this shot a bit less stressful, because if you leave this 30 short, then you've got a pretty uncomfortable putt coming up. Yeah. So this is like, I don't know, 20 feet or something, maybe longer, but especially because now that we're out in the open, and whenever I'm here, seems to be some, a little bit of wind going around, so you don't want it to be any more troublesome than it needs to be. All right, hole 9. We got about a 200-foot par 3, but it's downhill, so it probably plays a little shorter. You can just throw kind of a hyzer putter at it. I kind of like the idea of throwing something that has a bit of stability just to make sure that it gets to the ground, because I think it's probably a little easy here just to go long. But yeah, I mean, it's right there in front of you. You just throw something at it, and okay, I mean, there's not a whole lot to say. It's right there. However, I did have a tailwind there, and that knocked me down pretty hard, so do try to make sure you give the wind a little bit of thought as we start getting out into this open part of the course. And that's a yank. Really just try to keep it smooth here and throw it down the middle. You can kind of end up in jail on the left, or there's a big tree on the right, like a big fir tree, and if you end up in the middle under that fir tree, it's definitely pretty punishing. So just try to keep it in the middle. Okay, now going on to hole 10, I think we're kind of officially on the back 9, which is the open part of the course, very relative to the front. And it's going to be pretty windy today, so that's great. I'll try to do some talk about the OB lines, and we're gonna show you a lot of what you don't want to do. I end up struggling a good bit on the back 9. I probably go OB almost every hole. So this hole 10, down the right side here, there's an OB line lining the trees. There's also an OB line out here on the left, it's pretty hard to get to this OB line on the left. So I would imagine what you want to do and what Alex is talking about right now is throwing something relatively stable just at the right side of this gap and letting it hyzer down. As long as you get out here in the open, you're going to be at most probably 300 feet into the pin. So I really think the play is just something stable to overstable at the right side of this gap. I tried going like a flip up driver over the top. It ends up out here on the right on this side of the field, so not worth the risk. You might be able to do a forehand roller with something relatively understable because it has to track really far left to get to that OB line. But it's just such an unorthodox thing, and we're trying to throw a forehand roller down a hill isn't something I've heard, a lot of people probably have practiced a whole lot of. But we end up throwing a few more. None of them I think are any good until my last one. I think I throw an eagle that ends up being yeah, here it is. So this is a demonstration of what I would think is good on this hole. Which is pretty obvious. It's just hitting the gap. So my first one hit this tree and got knocked down. Pin is back. If you look straight down this gap relative to this fir tree, this pin's just right here on the left. So I'm not getting to it from here even without this tree in front of me. So I'm throwing a forehand down here. That actually ends up, this OB line is kind of, if you see like the mounds of these trees, it kind of lines the mounds of these trees as far as they stick out left. So I actually end up sliding OB down there on that shot. This is where that eagle ended up. So I think this ends up, Alex shoots it at about 250. So if you do end up a little bit longer and left, you can end up in a tricky spot where you're really blocked off by these trees and have to throw a really low shot or do something weird. So I think the eagles might be a pretty good play just for the sake of keeping it short of these trees. You can even throw a mid-range at that, but I don't think you want to be too much further back than this, just if you don't have to. You might have saw with that shot, there's a big wind off the left, and because this hole's inviting you to throw a big hyzer, I mean, this wind is just, A, it's holding them off to the right, and B, it's knocking it down. So something like that disc I expect to track most all the way back to the pin is just getting held off over here by that left to right wind and getting knocked down. So as we're out here on this open part of the course, I would just, in reflection, I'm going to think a lot more about how my shots will be exposing the flight plate or the disc to the wind and how it will affect it. I have a big takeaway from this round, which was, more about crosswinds. And I'm noticing a lot about, this left to right wind just holding off the disc from tracking back and knocking it down. Yeah, this is where that forehand pitch up ended. Just tracked OB a little bit on past these trees. And now you're in this funny spot, right? So, you could probably get on a knee and throw a little backhand through here. I'm going to try to tend to go for open airspace just to make sure I don't, I can't avoid trees as much as possible. So I'm just going to take a berg and just throw it pretty hard up above those and let it sit on it. And that ends up being fine. All right, now we're going to move on to hole 11. Oh, and just for reference, last year in MA1, this hole 10, averaged 4.25. So birdie would be great, but you're still gaining a little bit of a stroke on the field with a par on that hole. And honestly, I think a lot of these holes is about the same, where if you stay in bounds and if you make a par, it's not like you're not even losing strokes making pars. On most of these holes, I think you're gaining strokes by making pars. So maybe not, certainly not full strokes on most cases, but at least a little bit. So I try to go a big hyzer over this, and again, this is the same direction, so that left to right wind is really holding the disc off from coming back as well as pushing it down. So if I come to this hole again and it's a left to right, I'm going to play more of a straight shot, kind of like you see Alex throwing here, where kind of starting up the middle and at the trees, and then the wind should help prevent it from tracking too far OB left. But there is another OB line down the right here lining the mounds of these trees, similar to on the previous hole. And this hole's, what does this say? Distance-wise? This says 458. Which sounds kind of right. I think it's a little... It felt like it... it certainly felt like it played a lot farther than that, but it could have just been the wind and me not throwing too far at the moment. That's a fission volt just right in the middle. I like that play. I'm probably just going to try to keep it simple on this hole and certainly focus on just keeping it in bounds. You do want to try to get some distance on this shot to make the upshot less stressful, but I think if you come off the back nine with if you're leading the back nine statistically for least penalty strokes, you're probably going to be scoring pretty well relative to the field. So I think that's a good objective for me to have, or what I think I'm going to try to go for. So this is where that Undertaker ended up. I think we just shot this at like 250 or something. You can see right here is an entrance to go over to the yellow basket. I do believe our tee sheet, yes, our tee sheet does say red, and this is the red basket it looks like. So from here, you know, you're just tossing a putter at it, but there is a circle of OB around the green, so got to be careful with that. Oh. But yeah, in terms of these open holes on the back nine, I went OB on 10 and I've gone OB on 11. So I'm 2 for 2 on OBs right now. So here we go, hole 12, par 3, 255 feet. Baskets right here, big tree in the middle, and of course, again, down the left and right, as well as behind the pin, maybe middle circle 2 kind of distance, maybe 60 feet radius, 60 foot radius, 50 foot radius, if I had to guess. There's OB surrounding the green. So I'm going to try to keep it simple and just throw a straight putter right at it, just so that I don't really test the OB. At least that's what I was thinking when I up to this point, but I am also thinking about a forehand down the left with a stable disc to come back to the pin. But there is a tree down this left side, maybe a bit closer to us than the pin is. So if I push that forehand too wide or a bit too far straight, it could hit that tree and get knocked down OB. So there's something kind of scaring you off each line on this hole. And that's why I really kind of like the idea of just that straight putter throw right at it. Worst case scenario, I hit this tree in the middle and I have a circle 2 putt. Here's the forehand. This is a reactor, so it's kind of like a buzz. I could do this or maybe a zone, but that ends up hyzering in just in time. So that's somewhere in circle 1. Yeah, so this is the initial drive that hit this tree, just right here with a circle 2 putt, and as worst case scenario, I think it's pretty good. Okay, this hole, I'll back up a little bit. What do we got? Hole 13, par 3, 273 feet, but we're playing uphill, so it probably plays more like 350? Excuse me. So, again, it's windy, and lesson learned here, when it's windy, don't make sure not to throw it high, because Alex threw his high, and I'm about to do the exact same thing. And it's not just high. I mean, with a headwind on this hole, any amount of nose up's just going to cause it to balloon up in the air. So it might be worth playing a more simple shot just to the base of the hill and going from there. But I think it's a pretty gettable hole. What did this average last year? This hole averaged a 4 last year. So a lot of people went OB. Given this is only a 270-foot par 3, for it to average a 4, it's obviously pretty mean, and I think you can expect to have to play it with some wind. So anything in bounds is good. It's just like more easily said than done, of course. I think the one I end up throwing pretty well is this one. This is a Crystal Scorch, so it's a pretty just straight flying kind of 10 or 11 speed disc. And At this point, that was the best one I threw, so I think that's what I'm going to throw in tournament time. It might be worth throwing just a mid-range, just to the base of the hill. But even then, still have to throw a good shot if it's windy. If there's no wind, I think this back nine is going to play under par. But if there is wind, I feel like it's going to play close to over par, if I had to guess. Or this hole. Now we're going to move on to hole 14. We're going to be a downhill 348-foot par 3. Alex is going to go for a hyzer that kind of crashes in just short of the trees and gets into the green. Yeah, that gets through, and he's some kind of circle 2-ish looking thing. Snuck in the backside. I'm planning to go on a mid-range straight at it. This is a meteor. I want to throw something a little more stable than this. I had a hex, and I lost it while warming up. So this is a little less stable than I want to go on this hole. And I think we have a tailwind that's a little bit off the left as well. I throw that about just how I want to, but it's just going to ride over to the right. But that's down there in circle 2, and I'm plenty happy with it. Alex throws a few more hyzers in, end up doing about the same thing. I throw a couple more putters and mids, also end up doing about the same thing. So I'm just going to try to keep it simple, throw a pretty straight mid-range. There's one more thing I do want to say while I'm saying that, is that I'm going to try to throw, when I throw these, to aim down. Because if I throw it too high, no matter what, it's probably going to end up tailing off one direction or the other. So I'm going to try to throw it at the basket's height, so that way I have minimal worst case scenario issues. Yeah, so Alex's drive ended up about over here, I think, and I'm just right here. So a pretty obstructed green. I think this, what did this average last year? Let's see, this average last year in MA1 at a 2.96. So if you get par, you're not really losing a stroke. And I don't know if it would be labeled quite as a bonus birdie, but I feel like it's mostly going to get parred, probably not many birdies, and also not many bogeys. If I had to guess. I'm going to try to skip us ahead a little bit. Okay, now we're here at hole 15. This is a par 5, and it's a little more wooded than the rest of the back nine is. So I've got it written down as about an 800-foot par 5. I think the UDisc card I looked at said 790, but that might be for the other tee. This could be a little bit longer, but not much. 800 feet sounds, I guess, about right. What you're trying to do for the righty backhand is just push it down this tunnel and then fade off left at the end. We don't end up throwing very good shots. Alex's was almost good. It just barely kind of clipped the corner too early. You definitely do want to have some fade on it at the end, because this hole is going to track left a bit. So I'm trying to basically push kind of these trees here and end up fading left kind of around this corner. That Undertaker is just a bit too high. I'm not feeling the throw right now. But yeah, if I get that out a little flatter, well, maybe a little lower rather, I can get it around the corner. This is FD, and that's more what I'm looking for and what I imagine you'd be looking for. That actually does end up pushing a little too straight and catches tree on the right. So something that has a bit more fade on it at the end than that, I think would be good. I think I'm going to disc up from that FD to... I might throw a destroyer, honestly, because as long as you push just inside of these trees, you end up having some room to use going left. From here, the hole's going to go through these trees. You see this dirt, it's going to progress up this direction, and the basket's going to be up on the right. So I'd imagine I'd call it 250 feet to this tree and then another 200 feet to the basket if I just had to pull numbers out of my ass. That's, I think, what I would guess. So you could forehand it up through here. I think, if as long as you get it kind of to push through these trees and kind of out the backside, or even in the middle of them, I think you're in a good spot to get up and down. So yeah, here's in the middle of that dirt patch just past those trees. Basket's kind of right here, and this tall grass on the left is OB. So it can be a little risky to play this hole aggressively, just due to, obviously, it's very wooded on the front half of it, and then if you're making a approach from a long distance, you're going to have to hang something over this OB over here and trust it to get back to the right. So, but as long as you kind of have an approach from the dirt, the latter half of this patch of trees in the middle of the fairway, seems pretty routine and or simple. Oh, looks like I missed the drives on this hole. I have returned with the lost footage of hole... Which hole are we on? Hole 15. Nope, excuse me. Hole 16. Got it marked as a par 3, 442 feet. So this hole's changed since the last I played it. You used to have to throw over this big hill, and you'd play to this yellow basket. I see us on the tee sheet playing red, which is back here on this hill. So if it's not windy and you've got 400 plus feet of distance, I imagine you could go for the green. But for me, I'm just trying to play it into this open spot right here and then get up and down. Again, it's windy today, so you can just see this first drive I throw. I'm throwing a Draco, kind of like a Firebird, just trying to put it up here and have it hyzer. And the wind off the left just holds it and kills it, knocks it down because of me exposing, I guess, the flight plate to it. I thought I gave it enough height, but I mean, it just went right here and just went shoot straight down. Excuse me. Looks like Alex got his out a bit flatter than I got mine. So at this point, I've got a meteor in my hand, just planning to throw it flat and kind of straight, and ends up getting into the short grass inbounds. So I don't think I'm going to go meteor for this, but if it's not windy, it's not much of a problem. But if it's windy, then I'm probably going to go something a little more neutral. That way I can throw it flat and try not to expose the flight plate to the wind. And now coming into the green, lesson learned here is try to land not long of the basket. Obviously, we're on a pretty big slope, so that forehand, if it were to come in right at the basket, would be a bit dangerous, but I don't really have much of a backhand line because of this tree here. Maybe something a bit more stable would have worked out on that. I just kind of threw that to see what would happen. Honestly, if I threw the zone like I just threw that meteor, it probably would have been all right on the backhand, but the forehand was just more open. I just pushed it too long. And everything past the basket here is just... you might be struggling to find a line or a gap for your putt. I end up trying to get a scuba through kind of a V in the tree right here, unsuccessfully. But yeah, talk about a tough par 3. Looks like last year it averaged for MA1 over a 4 at 4.13. While I'm on that note, I also see that last year the previous hole, the par 5, averaged a 5.96. So you'll pick up a whole stroke on hole 15, the par 5, if you par it. And then hole 16, you'll also pick up a whole stroke on the field if you par it, considering it as a par 3. So now we're coming on to 17. Par 4, got it written down at 525 feet. I think you can go watch coverage of last year. I think with Chris Dickerson and maybe someone else eagled it. So they went for the green and got it and made his putt. There's a landing zone down here. You can kind of see the line of this short grass. So trying to throw it into that. But as you're going to see on this hole, about like almost every other hole in this back nine, the wind is makes this very difficult. So yeah, just that flight plate to it, that's just too high. It's just gets sailed out of bounds. So I'm trying to go FD on some hyzer low. And the key to me here is keeping the shot low, because if I throw it high, it's going to get taken away by the wind. That one, I felt like I threw it low enough, but because I had it on hyzer showing the flight plate to that right to left wind, it just got lifted and it carried, maybe just 10 feet out of bounds left. And so this is a reactor. This is just like a buzz. I'm just going to try to throw it flat and down the right, and that ends up being great. That lands exactly in the middle of the fairway. So I think right now that's the play I'm leaning towards. If you throw a B, you have to progress to the next tee box for your next shot. So we were both just going to try to throw at it just to see if we could get there. And I think we both just throw it way too high. Yeah. Yeah, I threw it a little too high to begin with, and then the wind just lifting it. So now, once you've thrown OB from here, you then progress to this little tee pad here for your next shot. So 1, drop 2, throw 3, drop 4, and you be throwing 5 from the drop zone up here. Yeah, so this is where that reactor ended up off the first tee box. So I'm probably going to try to replicate this in the tournament. As you saw, I'm right beside this drop zone pad. So this would be about what the approach from that drop zone pad is like. I didn't get a number on this, but I'm just throwing a berg at it. It might be 200 feet, if I had to guess. Maybe a little less, but something about that distance. And cool. And we have now progressed on to hole 18. So in reflection, front nine was good. I'm not going to change much about how I approached or played the front nine. The back nine, I'm so glad I went out and played yesterday, because I feel like the experience and knowledge that I gained on this back nine with the wind was good for me to have. I would say while we're out there on those open holes, make sure that if it's windy, really think about what the wind's going to do to the disc, especially on the crosswinds, because it felt like there weren't a lot of holes that had a strict head or tailwind. It was a lot of crosswinds. So, and of course, I know wind's not always the same, but it was a good learning experience. And I think if I look at these back nine holes, so on the front nine, let's see, everything's averaging relatively close to par, often under par, occasionally a little over par. And then on the back nine from last year, and again, this is just MA1 statistics, over par. The little 250-foot par 3 is under par. Whole stroke over par. The downhill one played even a par. The par 5 is a stroke over par. The subsequent par 3, hole 16, a whole stroke over par. Hole 17 played relatively a half stroke over par. So in hole 18 averaged 5, which this hole used to be a par 5, and I believe they have changed it to be a par 4. But again, if this is a par 4, then it, based on last year, averaged a stroke over par. So I think if it's not windy, you could play the back nine and probably get under par relatively, without too much difficult. But if there's wind at all, and shooting even on the back nine, I think is probably going to do pretty well, just because it's difficult to keep the disc in bounds with that much wind. Just because any amount of, you want to throw a hyzer, because the hyzer is going to, that's typically your predictable disc flight to get it to land somewhere you want. But with the wind, a hyser's just going to give that flight plate up. But anyway, but yeah, I think overall, if I look at statistics, we've got 6 under as 1,000 rated, even at this course last year for MA1 being 965, and even +5 was 923. So I think, if you get out here and you have a few bogeys, don't feel too bad about it, because you still have other birdies to pick up, and it's a tough course, especially given that the amount of OB and the potential for wind on that back nine. I think we will really end up adding a lot of strokes to some scorecards. But cool, hole 18, par 4, 675 feet. Turn that one over a bit. I'm going to play this like a par 5, unless I'm one stroke back of the lead going into this final hole of the tournament. I'm going to play it for par. I'm going to play it like a par 5, just because 675 feet, reasonably gettable, but the basket is up on top of a hill, and if I have to throw an approach shot to that basket from pretty far away, I could see it being dangerous. But depending upon if I need to try to birdie it, I'd go for it, but it's a really low percentage, and I feel like trying to get a lot. And I think the primary reason I'm talking about playing it as a par 5 is because for me, trying to get a lot of distance off this tee is very dangerous. Because it seems like we have a lot of open space over here to the left. Wrong. There is an OB line, maybe about here-ish, the whole way down the hole. So if you're going to try to grab a lot of distance, it has to be something that finishes straight. So if I were to try to rip a scorch, I'd risk turning it over into the street, or if it fades out even just a bit too much, it's going to be OB left. So I guess that probably is why I'm thinking to play it as a par 5 in my head, where 4 is or play it for a 4, considering it to be a birdie, playing it like a par 5. So I'm going to play this hole for a 4, just try to bite it off kind of in thirds, mostly because this tee shot, if I try to get a lot of distance on it, I just feel like I'm bringing in a lot of risk in terms of going OB left or right. Yeah, I mean, even that's an undertaker, and I don't quite get the angle or height on it right, and that fades out OB left. So this is where the first drive ended up, and in a straight line, you could probably get to the basket from here, but obviously with all the trees and everything, it's not going to work out. And also the wind, so I just pitch up a forehand. There's this OB line kind of curls up here into where you can see this tall grass. So I think Alex tries to go for it. Cool. And so here's the basket. Again, similar to, I think it was hole 8. It's just perched on this hill with a big drop off down to the road, which is OB to the right. So I'm going to try to throw a backhand that lands pretty much in line with the basket for this approach. But cool, man. So yeah, I'm excited for Hub City Halloween Open. Should be a lot of fun. The courses we get to play are great. Tiger's always fun. Feels like, you've got this wooded front nine and then just change up the dynamic a lot by going into the open back nine. Pipeline, just a great course, challenging but very, but somewhat gettable, with a lot of elevation type holes with elevation that I don't normally get to play in the Carolinas, or at least South Carolina. So Pipeline was a very fun experience, and I'm excited to play it in tournament. And then Holston, I've only played Holston once before, and that was in the 27 hole layout, and I really liked it. So I'm excited to see what they did. Looks like we're safaring a few early holes. There are a few holes in the middle between 12 and 19 that we're not playing, and I remember those holes even being really fun. So I'm sad we're not going to be playing them, but regardless, I'm excited to go out and get to play Holston again. So I'm not sure if I'll get out to get footage and upload something of Holston before the tournament to supplement the Tiger and Pipeline videos I've uploaded, but I'll see if I can swing that next weekend or not. I think I'm traveling though. But cool, man. hope you guys have a good week, and if you're playing Hub City Halloween Open, best of luck, and hope everyone, I would say have a good October, but you could be watching this 5 years from now. So hope you have a nice life. Catch you later.